Finland is ready to fight Russia and avoid any attack from that country, according to the Finnish defense commander. He said, Finland has built up a substantial arsenal against Russia. The Finnish Armed Forces Chief Timo Kivinen said, Finland has prepared for decades for a Russian attack and would put up stiff resistance should one occur. The Nordic country has built up a substantial arsenal. But aside from the military hardware, a crucial factor is that Finns would be motivated to fight. He said, the most important line of defense is between one's ears, as the war in Ukraine proves at the moment. Finland fought 2 wars in the 1940s against its eastern neighbor, with which it shares a 1,300 kilometers border. Once a non-aligned country, it is now applying to join the NATO military alliance over concerns that Russia could invade like it did Ukraine on February 24. Since the Second World War, Helsinki has kept up a high level of military preparedness. Kivinen said, we have systematically developed our military defense precisely for this type of warfare that is being waged there, in Ukraine, with a massive use of firepower, armored forces, and also air forces. Ukraine has been a tough bite to chew for Russia, and so would be Finland. 100,000 Finns were killed during the 2 wars Finland fought against the Soviet Union, and it lost a tenth of its territory. The nation of 5.5 million has a wartime troop strength of 280,000, with 870,000 trained as reservists. It did not abolish military conscription for males as many other Western nations did after the end of the Cold War. It has also built one of Europe's strongest artillery arsenals and stocked up on cruise missiles with a range of up to 370 kilometers. It spends 2% of its GDP on defense, a level higher than many NATO countries. It is ordering 4 new warships, as well as 64 F-35 fighter jets from the U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin. It plans to order up to 2,000 drones and deploy its own high-altitude anti-aircraft equipment, and is building barriers on its border with Russia. 82% of respondents in a poll by the Defense Ministry said they would be willing to participate in national defense if Finland was attacked. Still, Kivinen welcomed Finland's decision to apply to join NATO. Finland and fellow Nordic country Sweden are in talks with Turkey to discuss its opposition to their applications. Ankara has been angered by what it says is Helsinki and Stockholm's support for Kurdish militants and arms embargoes on Turkey. NATO membership would allow Finland to boost its early warning capacity by being part of the alliance's joint airspace control. Kivinen said, Finland would also benefit from the deterrence of being part of an alliance in which an attack on one member is considered an attack on all members. He said, the main responsibility for Finland's defense will still be borne by Finland. Kivinen says that the strategic situation in the Baltic Sea is not likely to change for the better in the near future. The situation in Ukraine could have ripple effects in the Baltic Sea region. He said, in itself, there has been no significant change as we saw in the past. In this situation, when there is an exceptional buildup on Ukraine's borders, we are following the situation closely. Prior to its invasion of Ukraine in early 2022, Russia heavily criticized U.S. and Allied leaders for NATO's post-Cold War expansion into the former Soviet bloc and sought binding security guarantees from them, including a permanent ban on any new members. In recent weeks, President Vladimir Putin said Finland's and Sweden's membership bids posed no direct threat to Russia, but he has warned the 2 countries about becoming bases for NATO forces or equipment. Swedish leaders have stated that they don't want to host NATO assets. Finland has yet to indicate its preferences.
Neighboring Norway, a NATO member, allows allies access for exercises but does not permit permanent installations or nuclear weapons. The proposed expansion is expected to enhance security for the Baltic states, who have been NATO members since 2004 and whose defense planners have long worried that Russia could seize Finnish and Swedish islands in the Baltic Sea, particularly Gotland, and use them as bases to launch attacks on their territories. Some Western military analysts have said that NATO would almost certainly need basing rights in Finland and Sweden to defend the Baltic states. Baltic leaders strongly support the Nordic states' accession and continue to press other alliance members to boost NATO's military deployments in their countries. Bringing Finland and Sweden into the fold is also expected to strengthen NATO's deterrence in the Arctic, a region where Russia has invested heavily in commercial and military infrastructure. Finnish and Swedish accession would bring all Arctic states, except Russia, into NATO, allowing the alliance to pursue a more coherent strategy in the region. Finland plans to deploy F-35 combat aircraft in the city of Rovaniemi, located 150 kilometers from the Russian border. American fifth-generation fighters will go into service with the country until 2026. The airbase, where the F-35 fighters will be located, is on the line of the Arctic Circle, 7 kilometers from Rovaniemi. At the end of 2021, it became known that the Finnish authorities intended to purchase 64 F-35 fighters from the United States to replace the obsolete F-A-18. The first batch of aircraft will be placed in Rovaniemi in 2026, and the rest will be based at bases in the south of the country. Against the background of Finland's preparations for joining NATO, the deployment of a large group of combat aircraft in Finland in the immediate vicinity of the Russian border is definitely a step towards confrontation. At the same time, experts draw attention to the fact that due to the deployment of such a large number of combat aircraft in Finland, this will definitely pose a serious danger to the ships of the Northern Fleet of the Russian Navy. If NATO will deploy some of the Rovaniemi-based F-35s on QRA, the flying time north to meet Russian military planes flying west of the Kola Peninsula will be shorter than flying from the Evens airbase in Norway. However, as part of Norway's reassurance policy towards Russia, other NATO allies have so far not been allowed to use the airspace over the eastern part of Finnmark when flying missions to monitor Russian activities. A flight from Rovaniemi to the Barents Sea will for a short minute or two have to cross over Norwegian airspace. Most likely, Norway will continue to facilitate for NATO's QRA over northern waters, while Finland from 2026 will guard NATO's new 1,340 kilometers long land border with Russia. Defense Minister said, the main goal of the complementary training and exercise activities with close partners is to strengthen Finland's defense capabilities and, with the presence of the troops, to show concrete support to Finland. The U.S. military will only benefit if Sweden and Finland join NATO, top U.S. military officials have said in recent days, echoing the enthusiasm of many in the U.S. and Europe about those countries' admission to the alliance. General Christopher Cavalli, the head of the U.S. Army in Europe said, I look forward to the accession of Finland and Sweden to the alliance from a military perspective. Each of those militaries brings quite a bit of capability and capacity to the alliance from day one. Leaders from across the U.S. military are complimentary of the Swedish and Finnish armed forces, a reflection of the close partnerships that they have developed with the U.S. and its NATO allies. General Jeffrey Harijan said, the Finns and the Swedes are extraordinary in their ability to distribute assets and protect themselves in a manner that is quite informative to us and at the same time generate combat power. He also said, Finland has a large army that is well equipped, very well trained, and can very quickly expand because most Finns have military training. Sweden's the same thing, a smaller army but a very capable army and an army that's growing.